Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today I am planning on installing the Greddy Midpipe on our project car, the 2019 Mazda MX-5 Miata RF that I have behind me. So for those of you new to the channel, we are conducting an exhaust comparison between the Greddy Supreme SP and the Goodwin Racing. In that exhaust comparison series, I will be showing you how to install the axle back section of the exhaust. I will also be installing the mid-pipe section. I will be conducting sound measurements for each one of the installs to see what changes in sound, whether it be decibel or tone, the addition of a mid-pipe adds to an axle back exhaust and how they compare to one another, and also comparing it to a stock exhaust. We will also dyno the car after each change. So as we install the axle back, I dyno the car, and if you haven't seen that video yet, take a look at the description below. There's a link there. We will install the mid-pipe, we'll bring it back to the dyno and see how much additional horsepower, hopefully some additional horsepower, mid-pipe adds. And as we go through the process, we'll be able to see the differences between the Greddy and the Goodwin Racing, assuming there is one. So today, the next step in our series is to install the mid-pipe section for the Greddy Supreme SP exhaust, and that is from the header back to the axle back. And again, the axle back is already installed. I have the mid-pipe section for the Greddy exhaust here in front of me. The car is already jacked up on stands and ready for the install. So if you're interested in seeing how to install a mid-pipe section on your ND Mazda MX-5 Miata, then stay tuned. So here is our Greddy axle back. Ends right here. This is where our stock mid-pipe starts. If you haven't taken a look at the video in which I installed the Greddy axle back, take a look at it. I'll go through the steps. It's very easy to install this. We have our resonator. And you'll see some shielding right here. Here's our catalytic converter, our O2 sensor. Here's our second shielding we have to remove. And then it continues on its way where it stops here at the header in the catalytic converter, the first catalytic converter in the header. But for now, we are going to remove the shielding, this one up closer to the front and then the one to the back. There are two braces. One smaller one closer to the front of the car, one larger one kind of right in the middle center of the car that we need to remove first so we can get access to the mid-pipe, and they are attached with 12mm bolts. Just got to squeeze the tab up here while pulling from the meaty plastic. Don't pull from the wires. Just grab it firmly here and pull down as you're pinching up here. And it should come right off. All right, next step is I am going to loosen up but not remove the bolts connecting the axle back to the mid-pipe and then the header to the mid-pipe. And then we'll remove the mid-pipe from this one hanger. Remember, when you're removing these, you do need a deep socket. It's 14mm. For those of you who have the stock exhaust, these will be these nuts will be welded in place. For me, these are not welded in place. This is the axle back from Greddy, so I need to hold my nut while I am removing these longer bolts. I am removing the nuts, the bolts from the header, and it's extremely difficult. PB Blaster to the rescue. If you do not have any, I recommend you get some, not just for this, but for any work you're doing on your vehicle. And we'll disconnect this. We will remove the mid-pipe, and I can show you the comparison of the stock mid-pipe to the Greddy. I just measured the two sections of the Greddy mid-pipe. One section is 8.6 pounds, the other section is 7.6 pounds, so 16.2 pounds for the Greddy mid-pipe, and now let's measure the OEM, 15.2 pounds. So surprisingly or not surprisingly, the Greddy is 1 pound more. I say surprisingly, usually the aftermarket will do what they can to reduce weight. You know, that extra pound isn't insignificant, but it's not horrible. But at the same time, it is larger. It's a larger diameter piping than the OEM, so that's where it's not too surprising. Let's go back to what we did several months ago. We did some measurements. Let's see how it compares the entire axle back, muffler, mid-pipe, etc., what it all adds up to. Let's take a look at the inner diameter of the piping for both the OEM and the Greddy. So for the OEM, inner diameter at the piping for the header is 2.25 inches. The measurement for the inner diameter at the header for the Greddy is almost 2.45 inches. And now let's take a look at the measurements at the muffler end. 2 inches inner diameter for OEM, and for the Greddy, the inner diameter is 2.38 inches. So next step is removing the oxygen sensor from your OEM mid-pipe and attaching it to the Greddy. So just remember, when you remove this, keep this little, there's a little washer here. Don't lose that. You want to transfer that over. And then I'm going to use, I believe it's a 10 millimeter socket to remove this attachment. We'll take this off and transfer it over to the Greddy. So we are at the header section. We bolted that down with the bolts that come with the Greddy kit. Reattach the oxygen sensor. Attach the two separate sections of the Greddy mid-pipe hanger. We've reattached our exhaust hanger. We've attached our mid-pipe to our axle back. So overall, what did I think of the install and lining up the various pieces all lined up perfectly? So that was great. A couple things. One, there's no instructions. While that's not horrible, I will say that it would have been helpful because they gave 6 bolts, 3 sets of 2 nuts and bolts, and it wasn't clear exactly which ones went to which sections. So why is that confusing with the nuts and bolts? I think it would have been better if they just had all the same size. So 6 of them come, 3 sets of 2. If they were all the same length, same size, nuts and bolts, I don't think that'd be an issue. I don't know why they couldn't have done that. It's a little confusing because there is one set of bolts that's much shorter. Not sure where I was supposed to use those. I didn't use them in the middle section because the mating of the two mid-pipe sections with the thick flanges, it just wouldn't have been long enough. So instead what I did was use the shorter bolts on the back to connect it to the axle back, which didn't give me a lot of length to attach that to. You know, my reasoning is if I find any problems with it, it's a lot easier to get under there, not even have to jack up the car and just change out those bolts. So. I think it sounds really good. It does sound louder on startup, but after the catalytic converter ignites within a minute or two, it does mellow out. I am going to let it run for a little bit. I'm gonna check to see if there's any exhaust leaks, and then I'm gonna take it for a spin. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing, because I will be publishing a video here in the next couple of weeks on the sound measurements. I want to see how much louder it is compared to just the Greddy Axleback and compared to our OEM. I will also be dynoing the car once again to see what additional horsepower, if any, we gain by adding the mid-pipe. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you like the video, smash that like button, like and share, and leave me a comment below. So thank you for joining, and until next time.